Hello everyone, I'm Sean. I'm one of the volunteers with the Conococheague Institute, and I'm here today to give you a little bit of behind the scenes into what goes into historic interpretation. Now, the first thing that draws the eye to pretty much everyone when they see a historic interpreter is that they're wearing clothes from the time period, and that's what I'm going to be talking about today. I've got 3 garments that I'm working on right now that are going to be used for interpretation in the Conococheague Institute. I'm really excited about it. First of all, because it's something a little bit different. When you're talking about British colonies in the 18th century, the Brits primarily, they loved their wool, no matter if it was 80 degrees outside or 20 degrees outside. They loved wool. It shows up in all sorts of merchant logs. It shows up in records of inventories and people when they die. It shows up all over the place. There's a lot of wool. But all the garments that I'm working on today, they're not made out of wool. So let's take a look. First thing we're going to be taking a look at is this coat panel right here. This is a coat, and it's made out of a fabric that is called nankeen. Nankeen is a bit of an interesting fabric. This was not true nankeen. True nankeen was made in Nanjing province in China. What makes it very cool is that the cotton is actually colored. So the color that you see on this coat front right here, this slightly brownish kind of pinkish color, the cotton is actually that color, and then it's woven into a cloth. What's really interesting about that is that means it will never fade because the cotton itself is this color. The cotton is never dyed. It's never going to be any color other than this color you see here. This is a summer garment, number one, because it's made out of a lighter cloth, so it's not going to be quite as hot. But when you look on the inside of it as well, this is all the lining it's ever going to get. It has some interfacing in here to keep the shape when the wearer puts it on. But other than that, all the rest of this in here, there's absolutely no lining. The pocket bag will be left out like this, so it'll be open and exposed next to the body. And then the rest of it has absolutely no lining in it whatsoever. You'll notice that there are 10 buttonholes on the front. All of these have been sewn by hand with silk thread. You will notice that only part of them are functional. These are 3-inch long buttonholes, but only about 1.5 inches opens to get the button to go through. But other than that, they're purely decorative, as it was fashionable to have long buttonholes at the time. Second thing I'm working on today is a pair of breeches. In the video that you saw Jacob and Matthew do previously, they talked a lot about breeches. Breeches are one of the more difficult garments for most people to reproduce, just because they're fitted so strangely. Breeches, I like to call them the mullet of the 18th century because they're all business in the front, party in the back, because they're very fitted in the front, to the legs, around the hips. But then in the back, the seat is very large. It has a lot of puff to it and extra fabric, so that way as you move, that seat is going to pull up a lot of the movement and you're not going to rip your pants. So they look very formal, very fit from the front, but then that back will be a little bit loose and you're going to have some excess fabric that's going to be hid by your coat. The breeches that we're working on for one of the other volunteers of the CI, they're being made out of fabric you might recognize, corduroy. Corduroy was a fabric that was being used in the 18th century primarily for men's lower garments. You see them in breeches. There's even some jackets that they show up in as well. But we have a pair of breeches here that are being made out of. They're not much to them right now. They've just really been cut and some of the linings have been put in. This is the front panel right here. So you'll see the flap up in the front that comes up. It's called the fall. That will be put in place there. So this is the front panel right here. Let's see it. They'll come down on the sides and they'll be fitted right above the knee. So these will end a little bit right above the kneecap, and then they'll have a band that'll keep them up in place. Very interesting garment on the way that they're fitted, and they do vary from person to person. So corduroy breeches. The last thing that I'm working on right now that'll be used in interpretation is something that was talked about in the clothing video that Matthew and Jacob did previously, and that's leather breeches. I have a pair right here that is being worked on. They don't really look like much right now. You can see that same fall in the front right here as they're in process. And then you'll see the seam that goes down to the bottom and will go all the way to the other side. What makes leather breeches interesting is they're constructed completely different than cloth breeches. both in the stitches and the way that they're cut. They don't have a seam on the inner leg. This is the inner leg right here, whereas your modern pants or modern breeches have an inner seam. These don't, so that way nothing comes apart. These are being made out of buckskin. Leather breeches can be made out of multiple different types of leather. We have them being made out of goat, being made out of elk, being made out of buckskin. But these are made out of deer, like you see many originals. So thanks for sticking with me. Hopefully I'll be maybe doing some more of these. I believe our operations director needs a new pair of breeches cut, so maybe we'll get that on video and show it. Otherwise, thanks for stopping by, tuning in. We'll see you out there.